But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Stephen Ballast. Ballast is going to teach us about how to become an expert at OBS, the Open Broadcaster software. It is an awesome encoder that helps you live stream your message to Facebook, to YouTube, do lower thirds graphics, and even have multiple cameras. So let me turn it over to Stephen. What a great guy. He's going to jump in right now. Thanks, Stephen.
Hello, I'm Stephen Ballast. Welcome to this session where we're going to talk about live streaming with OBS software. Before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you to Paul and Tess and PTZOptics for hosting this live streaming summit. I think it's really timely, and I hope that it's going to be helpful to a lot of churches. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce myself and tell you why I'm even here talking to you about live streaming. My background is in engineering, electrical engineering, but I've always had a heart for tech ministry in the church. I started doing sound in church when I was 15 years old. And so in about 2005, I transitioned from being a full-time engineer to being the full-time technical director in the church that I was at. So for the past 15 years, I've been a full-time tech director in a church. About 3 years ago, I started posting videos on a YouTube channel, and live streaming videos were what people were watching. So that's what I ended up making a lot of on my YouTube channel. I think my background in engineering and my understanding of the needs of the church were a good crossroads, and I hope that the videos I've made have been helpful to people. Okay, we don't have much time. I've got 45 minutes, so let's dive right into live streaming with OBS. So what we're going to talk about in this session, first of all, I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of how to get up in live streaming with OBS. Then we'll talk about maximizing your encoder settings, understanding audio in OBS, how to use OBS, what are scenes and sources, controlling your PTZOptics cameras from OBS, bringing lyrics in from ProPresenter to overlay over your video, and then finally, we'll talk about bringing audio in from a DAW and how to get that directly into OBS. So first of all, where does OBS fit into a live streaming system? Any live streaming system is going to start with a source, that's your video and audio, and it has to go through some sort of encoder. And that could be a standalone encoder, or it could be a video interface into a computer where you use software like OBS to do the encoding. Then that's going to go out over your internet connection to your destination, and that's where people will actually see your stream. I think the reason that OBS is so popular is, number one, it's free. But number two, also, it has a lot of functionality that goes beyond just encoding. And so you're going to see some of that today. So the first thing you need to do is go and download OBS from obsproject.com. And once you have that installed, when you first open it, it's going to look something like this. So what I have here is an ATEM Mini that is bringing in video from that PTZOptics camera, and it's feeding into this computer with OBS. And so in OBS, first thing I'm going to do is add a scene. I'll call it live video. Then I'm going to add a source to that. And for the ATEM Mini, it's going to be a video capture device. And I'm going to call that ATEM Mini. You can name these anything you want, actually. And then the ATEM Mini is actually the first thing on the list, USB video device. I'm going to click OK. And then I have my video coming in to OBS already. So now to get streaming, we need to go configure a few settings. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the video page, and the base canvas resolution is the resolution that, let me get out of this first, that this canvas here that we see where our video is at, the size of that. So depending on the size of your video coming in, you're going to want to set that base canvas to the resolution of your video coming in. So I have the ATEM Mini set to do 1920 by 1080. So I'm going to set my base canvas here to 1920 by 1080. The output scaled resolution, I'll talk about that a little more when we talk about maximizing your encoder settings. But it's another way to scale your video down if you wanted to use a different resolution than 1920 by 1080. So then we're going to go to the audio page. And I know that the audio coming in from the ATEM Mini is 44.1. So I'm going to leave that alone here. But if your video device was 48 kilohertz. You'd want to change that here. And then down in devices, I'm actually going to disable all of these because I'm getting my audio from the A10 Mini. I don't want any of these showing up in my mixer, so I'm going to disable those. So that's my audio. So next we're going to go to the output page. And by default, it's going to show up as output mode as simple. I always change that to advanced. It gives you more control over your streaming and your recording settings. Under encoder, you're going to have different options here depending on the capabilities of your computer. If your graphics card can do encoding, you'll see this NVENC option. That's probably the best option you can do, but for right now, we'll just use X.264, and that's going to use the CPU of the computer to do the encoding. And for this example, we're going to stream to Facebook Live. So I'm going to check rescale output here to 1280 by 720. And for live streaming, we always want this set to CBR for constant bit rate. If you were recording, you would set that to VBR, but for live streaming, we're going to leave it as CBR. And then a big one, the bit rate. Ideally, for a 720 stream, you want to be between 2500 and 3500. And for a 1080p stream, you want to be between 5500 and 6500. So for right now, if we're going to Facebook with a 720 stream, I'm just going to leave this as 2500. The rest of these settings, you're going to leave these as the default, and usually those only come into play if you're troubleshooting something that you need to fix. Now on the recording tab, we can also set up the encoder to record, and you can use a different encoding for your recording. And OBS, one of the great features is it lets you stream and record at the same time. You put in the path where you want your stream to go, or your recording to go to. And I usually go to the MP4 format. It gives you this warning that basically MP4 is more compatible with editing software. That's why we would select it. But also, if OBS were to crash while you're recording, you would lose that recording. Whereas if you use one of these other formats like MKV, if OBS were to crash, you would still have the recording up to that point and it would still be okay. The problem is an MKV file won't work in an editor. You have to then convert it after the recording. One of the cool things in OBS is that it lets us separate the audio encoding between streaming and recording. And that's what this audio track is here. If we go to the audio tab, what we can do is define track 1 as our streaming audio and track 2 as our recording audio, and use different bit rates for those two. So 128, it would be what I would want to configure to go to Facebook. And then I'm going to choose a higher bit rate, the highest that they have, for my recorded audio. So in the recording tab, the way you tell it which audio track to use is with these selections here. So if I selected track 1, I'm going to record the 128 kbps audio. And if I choose track 2, I'm going to be choosing this 320. And so back on the streaming tab, I'm choosing track 1. For the recording, you're going to want to use VBR for your rate control. And for the bit rate, you're going to want to set that as high as your computer can handle. You know, a camera is going to be recording anywhere from 35,000 to 50,000. I find that about 22,000 is a good file size ratio to quality. Obviously, the higher this number, the bigger your file size is going to be. So I find we recorded about 22,000 for videos that we're going to edit later. So finally, we're going to go to the stream page. And this is where you select what destination you're going to stream to. So I've selected Facebook Live. If you're going to something like Vimeo, you would select custom and enter in the RTMP server and stream key here. But for this demonstration, we're going to go to Facebook Live. And this is where I'd paste in the stream key that I would get from Facebook. So let's go there. And I would go to Live. And here's my stream key. So I would say copy, come back to OBS, and paste. And I'm ready to stream with this setup. If I were to click Start Streaming, It should show up here in just a second. It says connecting to live video. This can take a few seconds, take a little while. So there it is, ready to go. And if I were to click this go live here, this video would be live on my Facebook page. Okay, so that's gotten us to Facebook. We're live streaming on Facebook already, just in just a few minutes. So let's go back in and look at a few more details about the encoder settings. Back in OBS, I'm going to stop this streaming so we can edit some of the encoder settings. And I'm going to go into settings and back to output. I should probably first say that encoding is a really CPU intense process. So you don't want to skimp on your computer. You should, I recommend an i7 processor with 16 gigs of RAM. And also, if at all possible, use an NVIDIA graphics card that can support NVENC encoding. On their website, NVIDIA has a listing of graphics cards that support NVENC encoding. And what this means is that back in OBS, in the encoder, when we select this NVIDIA NVENC, OBS is now going to use the graphics card in the computer to do the encoding. And so that's going to relieve a lot of pressure off of your CPU to do other things that it needs to do to process the video coming in and adding graphics and all that kind of stuff that you want to do. And then the graphics card can do your encoding. Another thing you need to do, I can't stress this enough, is to measure your upload speed. As upload speeds are getting faster these days, this is becoming less of an issue, but I recommend that you set your bit rate in your encoder to half of what your upload speed is. So if you only have a 5 megabit upload, that means you can only set your bit rate to 2.5 megabits. If you have, now this doesn't mean if you have a really fast internet connection, let's say you're connected to fiber and you have a 100 megabit upload, that doesn't mean you set your encoder to 50 megabits. Your OBS and your computer aren't going to like you. So still use the recommended bitrate settings, but that means that you can use those without having to worry about your upload connection. One of the things you can do is if your CPU is having a hard time keeping up with the encoding, is not rescale the output here in the encoder. So if we uncheck that, then we can go back to the video page, and in the canvas, we can change this output resolution. And what that does is it rescales here in the canvas before it's given to the encoder. And this canvas, what you see in the canvas here, is generated by your graphics card. So your graphics card is doing the scaling, and then your CPU will be doing the encoding, and it's already at 720. And then as a last resort, if your CPU isn't keeping up, in the streaming encoder, we can change the CPU usage preset. The way this works is it's kind of like someone working in a kitchen. If you work faster, you can get things done faster, but you're also going to make a bigger mess. And so you can change it to super fast. And what it does is your CPU will be able to encode faster, but it's also going to be a little messier. The quality won't be as good. So I recommend staying at the default of very fast. But if you need to, if you're desperate and your CPU isn't keeping up, you can change this to super fast and you'll get a little bit better performance out of your CPU. So now let's take a look at audio in OBS. How do you get audio into your scenes? And then how does the audio mixer work? So the audio mixer is going to show you audio coming in from your sources, but it can also show you your system's audio devices. So if we go into settings and go under audio, if we enable any of these, then that device is going to show up down here. What you need to understand is that from the audio settings, this is global. So it's going to show up in whatever scene we create. It's still going to be there. So one of the reasons why I like to disable all of these is, for instance, right now, this is the microphone from my laptop, and that's probably not where I want to be getting audio from for my live stream. And so the easiest way, you could mute these, but the easiest way to get rid of them and just be sure that you're not going to get that into your live stream is in the audio page here, we're just going to disable everything. So that's why I disable all of those. But then the other source you can get audio into your scene is we can add an audio input capture device in under sources. And here again, this is going to show you all of the audio sources connected to your computer. If you had a USB device, a USB audio interface connected, it would show up here and you could choose that. And then now that's showing up in your mixer, but that's tied to the scene. So if I, for instance, go to another scene, that goes away and doesn't show up. So if you add an audio input capture, it's specific to the scene. If you add it through settings, it's going to be there globally. Okay, so I'm going to take that off. And now let's talk about what are scenes and sources here. Let's understand this a little better. So a scene is just a group of sources that make up what's going into your video. And we can rename these. So I usually like to have a blackout scene. And I will add a color source to this, call it black. And we'll select black. And there I have a blackout scene for when my video is done, I can go to blackout. So let's create a scene to play around with here. And you've seen the video capture device. That's what I use to bring the A10 Mini in. And you've seen the audio input capture. That's what I also brought in, audio just from the microphone or whatever audio device you have on your system. Some other useful ones, there's this browser, which lets you enter in a URL and show that. Another useful one is the window capture, which lets you select an open window from your computer and show that. Another useful one is the image and image slideshow. Image is just going to give you one image, but image slideshow is a pretty neat one. What it lets you do is you can even add a whole directory. And I'm going to go to my pictures and slideshow. So I'm going to select that whole folder. And what you'll see is this is just the folder of images. Let's change it a little faster for this demonstration to 3 seconds and just a half-second transition. And since I'm out, these were made by somebody, they're really big, so I'm just going to scale it. And what you can see is that it is playing this slideshow. And then when I click to the scene, then I go live, or this could be my pre-show slideshow that I show before my live stream. Another thing you can add in here is a media source, and that would be a video file. And you just give it a path to the file. And then it's going to play that video. Another way to use the media source is if we uncheck local file, then we can actually use this to enter the RTSP address of a PTZOptics camera. So TSP://192.168.5.203. That's the address of this camera I have on the network. And then there we have the PTZOptics camera coming in, not through the A10 Mini, but actually through a media source over the network. One of the cool things about OBS is that because it's open source, people are developing plugins for it that extend its functionality. And one of those is the OBS NDI plugin. And you can go and download this and install it. And once you do, that gives you an NDI source. And I'll demonstrate the use of that in just a second when we talk about bringing in our lyrics from ProPresenter and overlaying that over our video. So let's do that. Let's get our ProPresenter lyrics. I've got ProPresenter running on this computer over here. And what I'm going to do is across the network, I'm going to bring in the lyrics over NDI to my OBS computer and overlay it over my video. So let's take a look at how to do that. First, on my computer with ProPresenter, I'm going to want to make sure that I have a screen that is enabled for NDI. And I'm also going to want to make sure that the alpha key is enabled. And in this case, I'm just using my main audience screen because I don't have any other displays hooked up to this computer, but it should show you how that works. So then back in my computer with OBS, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the NDI source, and I'll call this Pro P. And then under source name, I'm going to find that other computer. And there we go. I've got the lyrics overlaid. Now, if I formatted it different in ProPresenter, they would show up in a different spot, or I can just click and drag it around wherever I want here in OBS. And now I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but when I transition in ProPresenter, it's transitioning the lyrics here in OBS. Another cool NDI implementation, I'm just going to delete ProPresenter here a second, is this program called PTZOptics. And if you just Google PTZOptics, you can find it, but it's at this address right here. And when you download and install that, it launches this program that lets you open a PowerPoint file and use that as lower thirds over NDI. And so in PowerPoint, I've just created this really simple, starts with a blank slide, has my name, ballastmedia.com. And so I'm going to save that. I'll just put it on the desktop. Okay, so I don't need PowerPoint open anymore. And in PTZOptics, I'm going to open that file from the desktop, lower thirds. And then now, if I go over into OBS, I can add that NDI source. Now, this is actually on my computer right now, but it would be the same over the network on a different computer if you wanted it that way. But basically, look for PTZOptics. And right now, there's nothing because we're on that blank slide that PTZOptics starts with. But you'll see here, as soon as I click to this other slide, it's overlaid over my video. So it's a quick way that you can use even PowerPoint to create your lower thirds. And so basically the background in PowerPoint is transparent, and anything you create, so you could create slides with shapes and stuff that would obviously look better than this, but it's a quick way that you can make lower thirds, and as you click through them, it updates on your video. Another plugin is the Advanced Scene Switcher. And once you download and install this plugin, what it does is it will add under the Tools menu, the Advanced Scene Switcher. And this gives us the ability to do some things automatically with our scenes. So we can go to Scene Sequence and then set up these transitions. So after 5 seconds, it's going to cut. I'm going to add that. And then I'm going to go from live video to another scene after 5 seconds. I'm going to add that. And then that should become active. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there we go. Oh, I didn't have anything in another scene. I'm going to turn that off because it can be annoying if you forget and leave it on and you wonder why your scenes are changing. So now let's talk about controlling our PTZOptics camera in OBS. That's really one of the cool integrations, is that you can do it all right in OBS. You can control the camera and you can live stream. So let's take a look at that. The first thing we need to do is go and download this plugin. And I've already downloaded it. And basically, this plugin, you just put into the plugins folder in OBS. You just copy it in there. And then what that gives you is this controller. And if you put the address of your camera in and connect here, let's go back to live video so you can see the camera. Now I can control the camera right here in OBS. Now they have an actually even cooler implementation, and that's through the dockable panels. So I'm going to close that a second. And you download this in the same place from the PTZOptics website. And when you extract this, you get some tools that you can use in OBS. So let me show you how that works. If we go into View and Docs, I'm going to say Custom Browser Dock. And what you do is you point this to where you downloaded that file. And then when you go to View, we can add this PTZOptics dock. And it can be docked or dragged around, docked in OBS here. So I can control my camera right here in OBS. And again, I would go into Preferences and set my IP address of the camera. And there you go. Right in OBS, we're controlling our PTZOptics camera and able to stream that. Okay, so now let's look at how to get audio from a DAW into OBS. And this is one of many ways to do it. I think this is the simplest way because it just happens over your network as well, kind of like NDI. What you need to do is go to reaper.fm and download and install the REA plugs. And what this does is it's all their plugins in a standalone installation without actually installing Reaper. So on the computer with Reaper, you wouldn't have to install this, but on the computer with OBS, you could go ahead and install this without having to install all of Reaper. So in OBS, what I need to do is add an audio device that's actually not used. So I'm just going to select something here that's an unused audio device. And that's going to show up in here, no audio coming in. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to go to Filters. And then what I'm going to do is add this VST2 plugin. Doesn't matter what you call it. And then I'm going to choose the Restream Standalone. And when I open the interface, what I want to do is I want to set it to receives. That's default enabled. And the identifier is default. So that's all good. I can close that now. And then in the computer that has your DAW, and I'm just going to use Reaper, I'm just going to open a project as a demonstration. You would have your DAW here set up to mix live. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put that Restream plugin on our output. So I'm going to go here to look for Restream. And here I want to send it to send audio, leave it at default. And now I'm just going to play back audio here. So then if we go back to OBS, we see that we're getting that audio here in OBS that's coming from Reaper. So that's it. That's the end of our session. I hope you've learned something today. I hope you found this useful. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Paul and Tess. Thanks a lot. Bye.
much, Stephen. That was incredible. Now, I understand that that was a little bit advanced, so you can join Stephen in the live Zoom breakout sessions and ask him more questions. I wanted to mention that OBS is so popular. It is the most popular live streaming software in the world. Over 40 million people use it, many churches. That was a super deep dive to show you how advanced and powerful it can be. But I wrote a book called The Unofficial Guide to Open Broadcaster Software, and you can download this for free at ptzoptics.com/book. The same place where you can get Helping Your Church live stream. So when you get Helping Your Church live stream and you decide we want to take this to the next level, we want to use some video production software, this book you can get for free as well. There's an audio book included, and there's an online course that you can take. And this is a lot more step-by-step, a little bit slower paced, and you can take it at your own level. You can read this book, and I think you could rewatch what Stephen just presented, and it would make a lot more sense if you were brand new and you were wondering what's going on here. So leave a comment in the chat. Stephen's going to get to a lot of those comments. We are running a little bit ahead of time, which is awesome, meaning we are going to have a little bit extra time with myself and Matt Davis to ask some great questions, answer some great questions of yours, do an awesome presentation on live streaming that gets a little deeper and a little bit more interactive as far as Q&A, because we'll have that extra time. But first, we are going to get to an awesome, another live musical performance. Are you guys here? Do we have them on live? All right, so we're going to cut to our next live musical performance. I'll see you guys in just a moment. All right, you guys are live. Let's go. Here we go.
We're live, and welcome to Worship Summit Live 2.0. It's so good to be here, and it's so good to join in the celebration. Wherever you are, I want to invite you, if you're on a couch, if you're holding your phone, whatever that might be, I want to invite you to worship along with us. Here we go.
Chosen, not forsaken.